Don't mock. I'm not a fool. Don't mock. I'm not a fool.
I just think that would be fun.
Hey there, it's Tony Curl here, and welcome to the Dumb Leaders Podcast. One of the most pervasive things that has been occurring in the world of political leadership during this prolonged COVID crisis has been the de-evolution of leadership. The de-evolution of leadership. Now, that may seem a bit of a harsh judgment for the political leaders who have proudly self-proclaimed that they have kept us all safe during this extended crisis. And I'm specifically talking about the Australian leadership, especially the state premiers. That has been part of their whole proclamation. We are keeping you safe. But the reality is far from different. So while they've kept us safe from potentially the full impacts of COVID, we are seeing escalation in mental health. We are seeing escalation in youth suicide. We are seeing business closures and the economy that will be affected for many, many years to come. Regardless of the strategy that has been used, the end is no closer. We are not closer to the end of the pandemic. Now, the states get locked down on a whisper of COVID cases. And also, we also see the Western Australian state has fundamentally become the new Hutt River Province. And I think they've been pretty successful in seceding from the rest of Australia. So Western Australia is no longer considering themselves to be part of Australia by their very actions that they continue to take. Now, the current reality to me is disturbing. So Delta's taken a hold in New South Wales, and Victoria once again is under the groups of lockdown, the most locked down city in the world. 200 days of the last 365 days have been in lockdown in Melbourne. Who would want to live there? Seriously. Who would want to live under that regime? So we've got Delta exploding in New South Wales. It's seemingly threatened to explode everywhere. Vaccination rates are still not where they want to be, but I think the latest estimate is about 30% of the population vaccinated. And there's a major push from business and associations promoting the vaccine, but that may not be enough to cover the sentiment of not getting the vaccine. But also, this is what people are missing. There's real-world results out there coming from much higher vaccination nations like Israel and Iceland, for example, and they continue to be flooded with new cases of COVID. So quite rightly, people must be asking the question, what's the point in getting vaccinated? So the major push from business and associations may not necessarily stem that. Now, Sweden, who took the herd immunity strategy, have so far evaded this current wave that seems to be inflicting everywhere else, bar in Sweden. So something to think about, something to research. Now, we've got political leaders hell-bent on a strategy of elimination through mandatory lockdowns, policing, and now army powers. We've got the army patrolling streets, playgrounds, and borders. Here in Australia, we have the army. Now, we have a growing angst and anger and complete unrest within the community. Now, the reality is non-compliance is starting. The reason why we've got police and the army out there is that non-compliance is becoming harder to achieve through the nature of the sledgehammer strategy of lockdowns. That's the reality. People are getting sick to death of it. The meekness and the surrender that has really accompanied the compliance here in Australia is seemingly close to dissipating. And once again, our government seem blissfully unaware of this. They believe that they're standing up here on a soapbox being the saviour of the world, but ultimately the growing angst, pain and anger within the community is something that they're, blissfully unaware of. Now, the fear-based campaigns that they've been a part of and the complete locking down of our society are not what leaders should be doing as a priority. Leaders' main role is to maintain calm and confidence that there's a way through this. And currently, the current leadership, the political leadership within the Australian political world is not achieving this. They're creating fear, they're creating ostracisation, they're creating division, not calmness and confidence that there's a way out, because no one sees the way out. No one sees a way out. The reality is COVID's been politicised, the vaccine's been weaponised, and all this by the people that we have elected into power. Now, so fear has become the prevailing controlling factor within our society, and that really just can't continue. But what do we really want? What do we really want? And each and every one of us here in Australia has to ask this question: what do we really want? And what is possible in what it is that we're facing? Leaders that encompass fear and smear, or leaders that are actively working with us to maintain our calm, maintain our way of life, and give us a way forward. There's a real clear, simple choice in many, many ways. The reality, but, is we don't have that choice because there's no leaders talking about a way out. There's no leaders talking about that. They've put all their eggs in the one basket of vaccination, and as I said, real-world results around highly vaccinated nations put a real doubt on whether vaccination by itself is the strategy out, because it simply isn't. It simply isn't. The simple fact is that the immunity rate here in Australia is far worse than anywhere else in the world. And that imminently puts us at risk of every new strain that comes along. Imminently puts us at risk. Our policies are failing us because they're placing us at greater risk, and much greater risk than others in the world. We've fallen for the narrative that has been driven by our politics and our media. We've fallen for it. And this is what we've really got to ask ourselves the question. We may be wanting to be kept safe. We may be wanting to believe that this pandemic was going to strike us all down, and we may want to believe that, but what do we really need is the question that each and every one of us have to ask. We need courageous leaders, not the bunch that we've got now. Leaders that can take on the challenge of Australia living within our changed circumstances, not one that locks down at the whiff of a sniffle. We've got to have an understanding that this thing is not going away in the world. If it's in the world, we have no chance of eradicating it from Australia, so we have to live with it. And the courageous leader is the one that's going to stand up and say, hey guys, we've got to live with this. It's going to change some things while we build our immunity, but we're not going to lock down anymore. We're not going to see suicides. We're not going to see businesses close. We're not going to kill off our economy because there's a risk from a health aspect. Every day you jump in a car and go for a drive, you are at risk of death. We get far more car road accidents than what we should, right? But there's never been a suggestion that we're going to close the roads, that we're going to stop selling cars, that we're going to limit the time that you can drive your vehicle. Nothing like that to say that. So the world, and I don't mean that as a comparison against COVID. It just means that the world has an association with risk. We cannot eliminate that risk, no matter how much we wish to. If we wanted to eliminate risk, why do we still allow cigarettes to be sold? We know that they are a risk. We know they lead to death. But no, we allow them to be sold. Yet we have a respiratory illness like COVID that we're not allowing ourselves to build up our immunity. To me, that's what our courageous leadership should be doing, not the belief. So what you may want from leaders, the belief that they're keeping you safe, the belief that their strategy will work, is ultimately not what we need now, and it's certainly not something that we need moving into the future. So what else do you need to do to escape this cycle is the question that I've really got to ask. What do you need to do? Because each and every one of us have a role to play. Each and every one of us have a role to play. We're being asked to dob in our neighbours. We've become incredibly judgmental, and that's the first thing that we can do to stop the bullshit that's going on. Australia is more divided than what we have ever been in our nation's history. And that is largely at the feet of our political leaders, largely at the feet of our political leaders. The world will never be a perfect place. Our leaders cannot create that perfect place. It will always harbour risk. You know, there was a flu outbreak in 2016 that, believe it or not, killed far more people than what COVID has here in Australia. A flu outbreak. Yeah, we didn't lock down. We were told to be mindful and stay at home if we felt sick. And that was the extent of it. What changed? We need courageous leadership, not the current round of dumb leadership that we've got here in Australia. Hey, my name's Tony Curl. Thanks for tuning in to the Dumb Leaders podcast.
Don't mock. I'm not a fool. And people who know me personally know that I am not a fool. But I won't get into the details of those. I just want people to realize that I'm not a fool. Don't mock. I'm not a fool. Don't mock. I'm not a fool.